SOAP International Media Festival was established in Iran in 2023 in order to provide a platform for a wide diversity of media producers and local and international artists in order to create art and facilitate positive interactions and cultural transformations. This festival aims to foster artistic creativity in order to build a strong and influential media platform on a global scale by recognizing and rewarding talented individuals with a background in media. We have planned educational activities, including workshops and seminars, to help introduce artists to a variety of media, broaden their vision, and encourage independent thinking. The SOAP Festival revolves around media and the New World Order, delving into the significance of local and regional identities, spirituality, cultural authority, as well as the influence of family origins. Moreover, it explores the idea that discourse can give rise to resistance and opposition against oppressive powers. This is the place where artists, thinkers, activists, and creators strive for the dawn or SOAP of justice, humanity, peace, and spirituality in the New World. The second SOAP International Media Festival was held on May 2024, bringing together some 40 content makers from across the world in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Our guest list included journalists, documentary filmmakers, artists, painters, and writers from the American continent to Africa, Europe, and Asia. These content makers, with a viewership of several millions, also belong to a diverse range of political views representing different sides of the political spectrum in their countries. Months prior to the event, the call to submit works was published in the media and social networks.
The second SOAP International Media Festival. In the fields of television, radio, new media, and a special section for Palestine.
The second SOAP Media Festival opened in 3 main sections: the General Section, IRIB World Service, and the Palestine Special. The festival guests arrived in Tehran a few days before the main event and fulfilled various roles, such as judging the submitted works in different sections.
Documentary section. Jury members of the documentary section of the second SOAP International Media Festival. Sean Murray, Igor Lopatonok, Mohsen Barmahani,
In the documentary section, which was one of the most important parts of the festival, 28 works were selected.
Iran is great. This is a story of foreign boy who was opening the who resettled to Iran, and he's have very fresh look, very foreign look, and all beauty, all culture, and experiencing not culture shock, but culture discovery. That was what is really impressed me. So if I will be select only one, I will do this.
Okay, and you?
Well, my first choice was to do 7 days, closely followed by Ambulance.
An ambulance.
I have a couple of others, but they don't come close to those 2 films.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So it's those 2 films.
that will be make totally different film. That's a good movie. First of all, why? Nobody in the West know what Soleimani, how Soleimani fight and win against the ISIS.
6 works were selected to enter the festival in the television program section. As part of this festival, educational workshops were held for guests to share their knowledge and experience with Iranian students and enthusiasts. 3 of the workshops are as follows. Among these workshops was the training workshop of Palestinian artist and designer Suhad Khatib titled Healing Stories Through Art. As a Palestinian, she said, "I have nothing but narratives. For in my homeland, invaders steal our homes and children. Narrative is not something of low value. As long as we have a story, we can continue and endure." When asked about the choice of colors and the use of the Palestinian flag and map in her works, Suhad Khatib said,
I don't use colors in general. This was supposed to be black and white, but I really wanted black and gold, actually. But in this one, I really wanted the word lit to pop up because there was an actual blue sign there, so I wanted it to be there. And I wanted the red color because it's the color of the blood. But I didn't want the green or any other color to be in it. And also, and I don't paint, by the way, neither the Palestinian map nor the flag. I don't do it. I probably did the flag only in 1 or 2 paintings, that's it, and this is one of them.
On the 3rd day of the SOB International Media Festival, a workshop titled Animation Director was conducted by one of Russia's most famous artists, Sergei Strazovsky. Mr. Strazovsky is a producer and director, the head of animation and multimedia department at Moscow State Institute of Culture, and a member of the Union of Cinematographers and the Film and Media Education Association of Russia. During the workshop, he talked about the principles of animation direction. Mr. Strazovsky began his workshop with showcasing some of his works and stating that animation is movement. He clarified that although script writing is the foundation of animation, it is not the same as directing. Mr. Strazovsky said mise-en-scene is the placement of actors and characters and the addition of ideas to the image, but this does not constitute directing. He explained, "We start by writing the storyboard, but our direction does not begin here. Directing is the dance between our knowledge and emotions." He compared film dramaturgy to playing music, where the changes in shapes, sound combinations, and codes are placed in a coherent format. He added, "Just as one cannot dance without music and emotions, one cannot direct without understanding human emotions." In talking about Israeli crimes in Gaza, American filmmaker Igor Lopotonik stated, "It is the duty of filmmakers to uncover the truth. We must create a film about this crime, and our mission will persist until justice is achieved." And in order to help fulfill such missions, a professional workshop on the conditions, requirements, and mechanisms of preparing and producing multinational films was held on the 3rd day of the SOB International Media Festival at IRIB University. During the meeting, Mr. Lopotonik discussed the requirement of international filmmaking, the filmmaking conditions in America, and censorship in the country. He also referred to the genocide in Gaza and discussed the important role of a filmmaker as a truth revealer and a changer of the dominant media narrative.
You know, first of all, that conflict in Gaza and that massacre of Palestinians by Israel, that will be inspiration for generation of filmmakers to make good feature films.
The director went on to say, "The first principle of filmmaking for me is that I never make a film that I am not interested in."
My first biggest principle, I never do any movie what I'm not interested in the subject.
"I'm also not in a rush to get things done. Some projects have taken up to 7 years to reach the production stage."
I never rush. Some projects taken 7 years, up to 10 years in development before we start filming.
This international filmmaker mentioned knowing an international language to be one of the main requirements for the production of multinational films, and said, despite its limitations, filmmaking moves beyond borders and can be a suitable capacity to convey a message.
International filmmaking, first of all, you need to know the language of international communications, what is English for me. After that, you need to be proactive. You need to move forward to help other people with their projects. And this is how you find your next film. Your film is not your film until you attached to the film. As soon as I start working on some project, this is my movie. International filmmaking is very, very, successful because it's crossing the border. And a film as a audiovisual content filled with emotions have a good quality to cross. And this is why I'm so much in love with Iran, because the culture difference is so big. But that's given me a good leverage to be a dramatist, to show, and that difference given me a very efficient tool to storytelling.
Along with the workshops, various forums were held with the participation of the festival guests. In one forum, for instance, the role of social media in today's life and politics was discussed by political analyst Dr. Setare Sadeghi, journalist and commentator Richard Medhurst, journalist and content creator Ahmed Kaballo, and Taig Hickey. On the issue of Palestine, journalist Richard Medhurst said, "With the True Promise operation, the Islamic Revolution sent a clear message to the Palestinian youth." He also commented on the Al-Aqsa flood operation, stating that the events of the Al-Aqsa flood once again demonstrated that the resistance is quite active. This operation clearly showed that the image the Zionists presented of themselves was merely false propaganda.
How do you think social media is influencing political activism? So, Richard, do you want to start with that, please?
Well, the problem with traditional legacy media, with print and television and radio, is that they used to control public opinion. You can't do anything. You turn on the radio, you don't have your own transmitter, you don't have your own printing house. So, by having the boom of the internet and social media come into play, we were able to cut through all the noise, and we're able to reach people more effectively and directly. And we've also seen social media bringing people together right now with the student protests. This has been a huge mobilizer, a huge catalyst, because people see someone going out on the street and saying "Free Palestine," then getting their skull cracked. They hate that, and so they go out and protest as well. And it
sparks more people to want to go on the street.
Precisely, it's exponential, and it has a catalyst effect on bringing people together. And then seeing people in the United States going out and protesting, we then saw people in France going out and protesting, and
even up to Tokyo and
exactly, yeah,
it's going far east.
And I've been following it in French as well, because I was educated in French, and that you should understand something, that if you think it's bad in English how they talk about Palestine, it's even worse in French and German. It really is. It's so bad in mainstream media. They even bring elected members of Congress in France to the police and accuse them of terrorism because they support Palestine. And so they are also bringing people together on social media, those politicians, the young generation, who are using their influence as well through this same platform. And so, as you said, it went to Tokyo then afterwards, and we need a bit of a jolt in England because we need to catch up. But this is something very important, and I myself called on social media to recall the personal experience. I tried to mobilize people in America, and then I did the same video in French, but tweaked to a French audience to get them out also to come out and protest. The French also have a very strong protest culture, so they should, this should be no problem for them. But when we talk about the power of social media, I think it's very important to recall that they know we are telling the truth, and that's why they are coming out and attacking us. And that tells you how powerful social media is. If it had no power, why would they censor people? Why would they take their money away, their living, and try to silence them?
And with that, I want to ask you another question, again, about your personal experiences or things that you have observed on social media. I believe with what happened after the Al-Aqsa operation, we're seeing like a very significant change of narrative. And that narrative is not only about Palestine and Zionism. I think in a way it's affecting the narrative on Iran too. It's on Syria, on the entire region, but also on like Zionism, for example, used to be like there were not many people who thought of Zionism as something to be ashamed of, right? Even until now, you have the Prime Minister of Canada talking about how Zionism should not be whereas like something embarrassing. But you are seeing more and more people, even the Jewish community, wanting to be or move away from Zionism. So what are some of the examples or significant examples in your personal experience or from the things that you have observed online that the narrative has dramatically changed for the better? And it has facilitated exposing the crimes of the Zionist regime and just exposing all the other lies and propaganda campaigns that are against the resistant forces.
What Zionists say is actually something they did themselves. It's projection, yes, propaganda. Yeah. Every accusation, every Zionist accusation is a confession. And so a lot of people are picking up on that. And that really shows you there's a groundswell happening. And I'm so proud. I'm really proud of people because the younger generation, we're not like 60 or something, but the ones that are slightly younger than us, they are not being brainwashed like the other generations in America or Britain, where you've got Zionism in every institution. Now it's really facing its biggest challenge in history, and we are there to present that challenge and to fight against it. And I'm really convinced that what we're doing is having an effect.
What do you think? And tell us especially about the African perspective. What do Africans share, and how, in your platform, how do you mobilize this activism among Africans?
Yeah, I think the framing is important. So as I said in my previous answer, framing it as an anti-colonial struggle, because there's no continent that's been victim of colonialism more and neo-colonialism more than Africa. Also framing it as a settler colonial project. We've had many settler colonial projects in Africa. People know about South Africa. They don't know about Namibia. They don't know about Zambia. They don't know about Zimbabwe. Kind of a settler colonial project that happened in Algeria and in Kenya. So we've had many settler colonial projects, and once you frame it in that way, people start to realize. But it's important to know there's very powerful forces that are putting money into misinforming Africans. We did a report on the role of the evangelical church funded from the United States that are literally saying to these churches in places like Kenya, places like Ghana, if you want funding from us, your sermons should mirror our sermons. So what is being said in Alabama in the United States needs to be said in Nairobi, needs to be said in Kumasi, etc. And what's being said in Alabama is again influenced by the evangelical right and the AIPAC lobby. So it's all to do with money, and what social media does is it evens the playing field a little bit. because we don't have money, but we have truth on our side. We have justice on our side. We have morality on our side. I can't remember who said the quote. Someone might help me out, but they say, in an age of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. George Orwell. And I think that's what we've seen with social media. We've seen that people can go out and just expose the hypocrisy. There was a woman, just one African woman in France, that just went out and filmed a far-right march. And she said, they won't allow pro-Palestine marches, but they're allowing these guys doing Hitler salutes. One woman, she didn't even need anybody with her. One brave woman with just a smartphone in her hand, and she can go out to the streets. She doesn't need the evangelical church. She doesn't need AIPAC. She doesn't need the strength of the US Army. She just needs herself and her phone. And that's the power of social media.
Tell us about your experience and what do you think of the role of social media and activism, especially as a comedian. How do you use your platform to raise awareness?
And just before I say about my own experience, I feel the truth example as well. If you look at the journalists, the heroic journalists in Gaza, you know, say, and I know it's not all about social media numbers, but just let's be crass for a second. Like Motaz has 18 million followers on Instagram. So for all the money that the Israel lobby puts into its promo and its propaganda, they can't compete with a human being reporting the truth of the genocide of his own people. And I think there's something really beautiful about that, that for all the faults of social media, it has come to be a kind of democratizing force.
The Forum on Palestine held on the second day of the Sob Media Festival was attended by Lebanese writer and analyst Charmaine Narwani, Palestinian painter and graphic artist Suhad Khatib, Palestinian journalist Isra al-Bahaisi, Lebanese journalist and TV show host Marwa Osman, Lebanese journalist Hassan Ilaik, Croatian journalist Daniel Yejek, and Marzia Hashemi as the moderator at Tehran's Milad Cineplex. In her talk, Charmaine Narwani stated that Iran is one of the main pillars of the resistance axis and has a fundamental influence on its members. Before, she said, we might not have been able to say with certainty that Iran is the main axis of the resistance, but with Iran's support, Hamas has been able to change the situation.
Iran has been viewed as, the benefactor for many, many years. It has created truly equal partners in the resistance, each that can deliver something that the others cannot necessarily. So, but that in itself is such a valuable, gift almost.
Next, Dr. Daniel Yejek, author and researcher, stated, Iran has a prominent role in international equations. It creates a balance of power through the support of the groups it collaborates with and maintains the stability of the region. Referring to the genocide in Gaza, Dr. Marwa Osman, university lecturer and TV host, said, there's a saying that the world was not born before October 7, which highlights the importance of what occurred. The attack on the occupied territories created new conditions for the entire region and demonstrated that the Palestinian nation is powerful and can achieve victory.
Is after October 7, the world was awoken because of the steadfastness of the people inside of Gaza, of the people inside of the West Bank. The resistance and the axis of resistance has been adamant on fighting the Zionist entity since the beginning of the occupation, especially in the last couple of years. We all remember the Sword of Al-Quds, we all remember the unity of fronts, Wahdat al-Sahad, Sayf al-Quds. We all remember these issues. The resistance was already up and running, but what we have not seen since the Nakba was the capability of the Palestinian people who had no other option but to remain and survive.
In response to the moderator's question about the West narrative of October 7, Isra al-Bahaisi said, journalists should speak impartially, but in the events of Gaza and the oppression inflicted on Palestinians, no journalist in the world can say enough to support the people of Gaza. She added, what we see in Gaza is that the Zionists are bloodthirsty and kill all the time. Later, Palestinian painter and graphic artist Suhat Khatib discussed the changes following the October 7 operation and explained the narrative that emerged from Gaza after October 7 was rational. The media called it a storm, and this storm disrupted many equations. Pointing to the importance of a story that lasts, she emphasized the need to provide accurate information and focus on the story itself rather than a narrative that unfolds. She stated, "Every news is a story. We must ascertain the facts and their accuracy. I am a professor at my university and an artist. I strive to convey ideas and emotions through my art. In America, I have organized several rallies in support of Palestine. I started a demonstration in 2014, and I am aware of how effective these actions can be."
The United States, which is the NATO people, like whoever they are, they've been controlling the narrative for so long. And they have been telling their side of the story, which made us hate ourselves. Therefore, we don't hear each other out. Like when you have a genocide survivor, you really thank you so much for giving her the space. We really need to hear her with all of her senses. We really need to pay attention to the stories that she's saying. And also, I'm also saying this, and I mentioned the story of Mike Brown and the prison industrial complex and all of this uprising to say, the United States that created this narrative is an empire that is built on enslaving Africans, killing the indigenous people, and colonizing our countries. One of my friends the other day was giving a lecture in Jordan, where I moved 3 years ago. I moved out of the United States to Jordan. He was saying, the closer you get to Palestine, the smaller the pieces of land become, and the more borders you find. And so if the world does not pay attention to the Palestinian story, right now, as we go through a genocide, the borders will keep getting smaller and smaller, and the stories will keep vanishing more and more. And so to your point, it's our time to tell our stories, by all means necessary, as Malcolm X used to say. And and I'm glad to be here to be able to share that story with you all.
Following Ms. Khatib's powerful words, Gaza-based journalist Isra al-Buhaisi discussed one of the events she had witnessed in Gaza, and Marwa Osman summarized it in English. This was only one of the countless unbelievable stories that happen in Gaza every day and inspire artists like Ms. Khatib to depict them.
في الطفل يحيى حمد. هذا الطفل أنا أولادي 4.
I'll be brief about what Sarat was saying. She was saying that to our friend, when you said that you're an artist, you're not like the other professions here, especially the journalism. No, you count very much because she has a story to tell us. In Gaza, one of the she says she has 4 children. Allah khaliliki yawm yahfadhum ya Rab. She has, but after the Al-Aqsa flood, now she has millions of children in Gaza, one of which is Yahya Hamad, who was a young man, a young boy who lost all of his family members in one of the bombings, every last one of them, direct family and extended family. And when she asked him, Yahya, he's now considered one of her children, and he's currently being treated in Egypt because he might sadly lose his foot or his leg. When she asked him what happened to you that night, Yahya, he said that, I don't know, I just remember that someone just picked me up off my bed and I just flew outside, I'm sorry. And I just flew outside and I was on my mattress outside. That's the only thing that I remember. And she said that when she wanted to interview him and tell his story to the world, she sat with him and he had with him a mobile, and it was his mother's mobile phone, and all the people in the family or his family had photos on that mobile phone except his mother. So he couldn't find a photo for his mother. So he couldn't find a photo for his mother, and his only wish when she asked him, what do you want? He said, I want to see my mother, and there's no photo of her because she was wearing the niqab. That's why she didn't have a photo for his face. So one of the artists contacted Isra and told her that connect me to Yahya because I want him to describe his mother for me and I shall paint her for him so he can see his mother. I'm so sorry. So you count. As an artist, you count more than anything.
looking at the importance of that decolonization of the mind, do you think that with everything that has happened, again, I'm going to say October 7th, of course, we know that it is Tufan al-Aqsa, but from that date on, do you think that we are progressing in that in various parts of the world? Because isn't it about the narrative that the hegemonic front had always put forward, whether we're talking about their media or from the political aspect? And what Charmaine talked about in saying, even in, for example, places like Iran or the Resistance Front, it's a matter of here and understanding who we are, our own potential, and that we are in the middle of a major, major shift. It is the East that is important, but still we are in somewhat of a transition and understanding that. Your perspective on that?
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's a very, very important point that you brought up about the empire and the empire falling, and also about for us to speak about the anxieties of the empire, because when we talk about media, we also need to remember, as was mentioned before, the global south, the third world, is a vast majority of the world's population, which has in so many different ways been exploited and abused for centuries by the West. Europe and North America still today depend on different forms of neocolonialism and continue to build their wealth on the backs and the blood of the rest of the world. And I think we see much of that reflected in a global media apartheid. And again, maybe also going back a couple of questions before, when we talked about narrative and how efficient media is. And another question we might also think about is who the audiences are. Because now, in May 2024, what is even the purpose of trying to explain to someone that there is a genocide if there is an audience that has not understood that there is a genocide? There's a genocidal settler colonial regime whose survival depends on this very genocide. And at the end of the day, if we look at the dominant English language mainstream media that occupies such a vast space, it speaks to a small minority and represents a small minority, and it represents basically the political and economic elites in the West, which are a minority in their own countries, and doesn't speak for the vast majority of the world's population, which is also why, if we look at the New York Times, CNN these days, we're at a point where the Israeli regime is live streaming the genocide. Israeli soldiers posting videos on social media about all of these unspeakable war crimes that I don't have the words to even describe. And at the same time, we'd see the New York Times trying somehow to come up with a headline that would obscure in the language something that has already been documented as a genocide. So I think, and I completely agree with what you said, it is also really a question of how much relevance should be given to, again, audiences who would even dispute whatever the Palestinian people have been going through for decades, for a century of a settler colonial regime, which we can very well say today are being targeted by the most advanced settler colonial regime that is funded by the most powerful Western powers.
The documentary forum of Sob International Media Festival took place at Tehran's Millat complex with a group of documentary filmmakers, including American filmmaker Igor Lipotonik, Irish filmmaker Sean Marie, American filmmaker Dan Cohen, Lebanese documentary filmmaker Radwan Mortada, Iranian documentary filmmaker Hassan Yadegari, and the meeting's moderator Bahman Nurai.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to have you. Welcome to another specialized panel on the second Sob International Media Festival. Today we're going to talk about documentary cinema, and of course the role that documentary cinema plays in the world order, in the world of politics, and of course how we can keep documentary cinema alive in today's world that mainstream media and mainstream cinema pressurizes documentary into a very far corner. So with me today, I've got the pleasure of hosting wonderful journalists and filmmakers from all over the world. I would like to go one by one. Each of them will introduce themselves briefly. Of course, I know the audience here are already familiar with them, but we would like to have that on record, and then we will get the ball rolling with the first question. We're going to start with Mr. Hassan Yadagari, our filmmaker and journalist from Iran.
I believe the documentary gold keys is a 3 point. First is a research, second is a research, and the end of this is a researching. For starter research in a documentary, I believe that knowledge, your art, your techniques, your ability to have some kind of, for example, communicating with your environment, with your people around you is so important and makes your approach to find your subject.
Thank you so much, Hassan. It was really amazing and nice, how you prepared the outline of your work, which brings me to a question to my second guest here, Radwan Mortaza from Beirut, Lebanon. Really amazing filmmaker and also cineast, a journalist working for the Lebanese national TV and radio stations. Radwan, everybody talks about your huge network of people. They say that if you want to make a film in Beirut or Lebanon, you need to get connected to Radwan. What is the key to that? Because you have everything with your connections.
First of all, thanks for your ads. For me, you advertise me or my work. First of all, I want to say that I feel that making a documentary is like keeping your history and keeping your memory. And because I'm a journalist and I'm a filmmaker, I feel when you write the news or you write the article, it dies after several days. While the documentary, you can go back to the documentary and watch it whenever you want. And you can tell your story through this documentary. This is first. Secondly, if you want to do a good documentary, you have to have a good connections, because sometimes it's kind of filming a biography or filming something especially related to investigation. If you want to do an investigative documentary, you need to have access, and access means permissions, means reaching documents. It's not easy to anyone to get. Reaching people, it's not easy for anyone to reach them or to let them talk.
Very good. Thank you so much. And actually, I wanted to talk to you about your documentary, but we're going to get back to you regarding that. Igor, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm here and everybody's singing your praise since you have been here a few days and you have also given talks. I was actually Googling you before coming here, and I saw that you're involved in the marketing of documentary cinema as well. Actually, you're a founder and in Ukrainian cinema, and you're kind of a Ukrainian film commission, if I remember right. How does it work out now in today's world and in the situation we are living in?
I'm blessed to be working with the big people who teach me. I was blessed to work with Robert Perry, a great documentarian and a great investigative journalist. Robert break the Iran-Contra story. And I was blessed by studying directing under hand of Oliver Stone, who is amazing, my friend, partner for more than 10 years now. We did 5 films with him and working on one more. And of course, Ukrainian situation, I was announced public enemy in Ukraine 2016, 2024, they put the bounty on my head. 10,000, not a big one. I believe they're gonna fail, as usual. But I will keep going, I will keep pushing. And we understand that now we can together penetrate the censorship, we can arrange distribution, we can finance, and we have enough network. This is last 10 years was amazing development of interest to the good documentaries and a good, I can say, alternative, not mainstream media. So I have a great hope in this. And thank you, Sop, for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Our pleasure. The pleasure is all ours. Very good. Thank you so much. And now, Dr. Sean Murray, if I may call you Sean, it's always a pleasure to have you. You made a film on Quiet Graves, I actually, as we discussed it before this session, these kind of films are usually, if you would like to also talk a little bit about the story and the gang and how the government was aware of the situation, even condoned it. So how did you get your film across the pond, all over the world? You had screenings for your film. These sorts of films are usually pushed into a corner and sometimes even do not see the light of day. How did you manage that?
Well, coming from Ireland and being under occupation still in the 6 counties in the north of Ireland, we were heavily censored during the conflict. So the media were a major arm of the British government. So we were kind of voiceless. We were under censorship, a thing called Section 31 for 23 years, that our politicians their voices couldn't even be heard. They were completely censored. But also our community, where I came from, were censored. So the official narrative was the official narrative. The stories from my own community were hidden. They were marginalised. And that gave me galvanised me actually to become involved in documentary film. So most of my work deals with British government collusion with loyalist British paramilitaries. On Quiet Graves is a film that looks at this one particular gang that were paramilitaries by night, but policemen and British soldiers by day. They're responsible for at least 120 civilian deaths, Catholic civilian deaths. And it was an expose of that gang. I travelled to South Africa to interview a policeman who was involved in a killing. And it was pretty controversial at the time. I mean, the film was in 2018, but I'm still involved in many court cases because my critics, they can't debunk the truth that's within the film, so they attack me personally. So it was for the first time the Irish broadcaster RTE screened an independent film of its type, and it became majorly controversial at the time. But it opened up a lot of doors for other filmmakers because this word collusion, government journalists didn't, they didn't look at British collusion. It had to come under the stool of independent filmmakers or independent journalists or human rights groups to expose the level of collusion. Not only did the British government, murder innocent civilians in the street, they were heavily involved in arming and funding paramilitaries to do their dirty work when they could not do it also. And this film is a major expose. It travelled all around the world, and it's still travelling actually.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Sean. And then we've got Dan Cohen from the US. He just arrived. I know you're still jet lagged, and I know you're going to take like 3 to 4 days to get all right, but you're going to leave like too soon. Always a pleasure to have you. And Dan is a very special guest now. Dan has worked in Gaza, like you made a film, Killing Gaza, 2018, was it, right? Yeah, and Dan has worked on both sides of the crisis. Dan has worked like on the Palestinian side, on the Israeli side. I think currently working on the Israeli side. But Killing Gaza, now it's like the main talking point again, and I think needs to be seen from a different perspective. How did you do that, and how did you get it out?
Well, in the U.S., basically the media is controlled by Zionists, and so we sought independent platforms. We basically published on our own. We put it on Vimeo, and we used our social media presence to promote the documentary. We went to universities. We were hosted by Students for Justice in Palestine groups, which now are being banned and criminalized even in the United States. So the U.S. government is trying to destroy this infrastructure to be able to spread awareness, to raise awareness about the crimes of Zionism in Palestine. So it really comes down to grassroots, to popular media, kind of counter-hegemonic media outlets, because we don't have, CNN has BlackRock and Fox News has Rupert Murdoch, the billionaires and investment firms behind them, whereas we who are in independent resistance media, we rely on small donors, or sometimes work for state-funded media, or whatever it may be. So it's a real challenge, but I think the lack of trust in the media in the West, in the United States in particular, makes it very fertile ground, because people know they're being lied to by the mainstream media, by the New York Times, by the Washington Post and CNN, and they don't necessarily know what the lie is, but they're hungry for alternative information.
Thank you, Dan. It's really amazing how you got that. And you were telling me a very nice story about different film festivals. You actually tried to send your film to be seen, and it was only accepted in... I would like you to say the story.
Yeah, well, Killing Gaza, which we released in 2018, we submitted to a number of Palestine film festivals in the United States, and we were not accepted by any of those. Yet films, and our film Killing Gaza is a very gritty portrait of the 2014 slaughter of Gaza and the aftermath. Palestinians living and dying under siege, unable to rebuild their homes, still being shot at and bombed by the Israeli military. And there wasn't much interest in these sort of, in the big film festivals that deal with Palestine, where other more, feel-good films about Palestinian refugees in Lebanon learning to cook food as if they don't know how to cook. That won a big award, but ours was not accepted. However, here in Tehran, our film was accepted, and that was where we won the second prize at the Resistance International Film Festival that year. So it was a great honor and really said a lot to me about the culture and the consciousness of resistance in Tehran compared to the United States.
Thank you. It was a very nice story, actually. Thank you so much for sharing that with our audience also.
The second SOB International Media Festival also offered its participants a chance to experience the Iranian capital through organizing tours of Tehran. As a side event, close and personal interviews were conducted with the festival guests. In the program titled SOB and hosted by TV show host Hassan Tawakkoli, artists, filmmakers, and journalists talked about their experience in their field, what inspired them to choose it in the first place, and what keeps them going. Join us in the second episode where we focus on the closing ceremony and the awards of the second SOB International Media Festival.